Hi, it's Elizabeth Willetts here from Investing in Women, and I am delighted because we have Genna Clark with us today from the Women's Leadership Space, and we are live on Facebook and LinkedIn. So as people are logging on, if you could let us know if you can hear us all right, maybe give us a like or an emoji. Any problems with sound, etc., let us know. But yeah, I'm delighted because we are welcoming Genna Clark from the Women's Leadership Space, and we're going to be talking all about how to overcome imposter syndrome and become the leader you are meant to be. I think we all have imposter syndrome at some time or another, so I am very, very excited to be discussing with Genna today how to manage that syndrome and become the best versions of ourselves and the best leaders that we can be. So thank you ever so much. People, as they're logging on, could let us know that you can hear us all right. That would be fantastic. But welcome, Genna. Thank you for being here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Good to see you again, Liz.
Yeah, good, thank you.
So my name is Genna Clark. I am a working mum with my own business, and I am a coach and trainer. So I offer one-to-one coaching, group coaching and workshops. And the people I tend to work with I talk about it being feminine energy, actually. So I'm positioned as the women's leadership space, but I do actually have some male clients as well.
Yeah.
So my dog's knocking at the door. I apologise.
All right.
Because what I want to show up as in the world, the difference I want to make is to have more feminine energy and power showing up in influential spaces in the world. I think it's a real gap that we've got at the moment. There's a lot of toxic masculinity, and that isn't to say that that's all men. There's a lot of men with very feminine qualities. So it's things like emotional intelligence, compassion, kindness, and they're the things that I want to see coming into the leadership space. So I tend to work with women who are in kind of middle management or just maybe leading projects and teams for the first time, and they get rewarded for the effort and results that they're getting in work, but not necessarily the support that executives get further up that help them feel confident and authentic in what they're doing. And imposter syndrome is a big piece of that for them. So it's a great opportunity to talk about it. Thank you.
I'm really excited. You know, it's so interesting you said that because I have managed before, and I think that a lot of workplaces reward masculine behavior and masculine traits, and I have worked in quite masculine environments, and I agree with you. Brilliant to see more feminine traits and those feminine traits being rewarded. I enjoyed that Sheryl Sandberg book, Lean In, but I think a lot of it, thinking that was how to become more masculine, how to,
Well, she does talk about imposter syndrome too, but she's in a very masculine world. I used to work in tech, and actually years ago, this is a quick detour from imposter syndrome, but it is related because years ago I was at Microsoft head office in Seattle at the conference center, and I tried to find the loos, and there were no loos for women on my floor, nor the floor above, nor the floor below. And eventually I found that this was a long time ago. This was probably like 15 years ago. Eventually I found the loos on, they were like remote corner of the building. And when I walked in there, they had one female vice president of Microsoft, and she was in there too. And she was saying she is furious that this is the state of play, and the way it relates to imposter syndrome is that certain industries like that, and potentially financial services as well, because they've been so male heavy, it's hard not to feel like an imposter because you're different. You're different to everyone else there. You do feel like, if you look around at the people who belong, they're men, and very often white men. So, and that face is changing, but this is part of the diversity, equity, inclusion discussion. And this is why imposter syndrome is a really significant part of that, because you've probably heard the phrase, you have to see it to be it. So it is, and this is the thing about once people can see other people who look like them or have similar qualities or traits or even same sex as them further up the tree doing what they're stepping into, you do feel like less of an imposter automatically.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So
yeah. Oh, that's an interesting story. Yeah, I mean, I read a while it's a bit longer ago than that, but like PwC used to not have female toilets on every floor, and it was every other floor or something. So yeah, it would make you feel, I think, quite uncomfortable if it felt like it wasn't accommodating you and where you weren't welcome there.
Your basic needs aren't accommodated. You don't belong. So and we haven't even really discussed what imposter syndrome is.
No,
actually.
so let's talk. That's what we want to know. What is imposter syndrome?
Yeah. So imposter syndrome is that sense of it's partly about not belonging or feeling like you belong. And it's partly about, it's almost feeling duplicitous about how you're representing your skills and experience and feeling like you're a fraud. You're a fraud. So another way I kind of look at it is, so that's the kind of definition of it. And that brings up those feelings of unease, low confidence. And there is belonging is a really important thing for human beings. We're social pack animals. And if you don't feel like you belong, there's a threat to you too. So it brings up all of those kind of things. But when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, I was thinking another environment where you maybe see someone billed as an imposter is maybe in movies and in books.
Yeah.
And when I think of the role that an imposter has, like, so even in children's thing, that the kind of concept of an imposter is someone who's frankly a bit wicked, isn't it, quite often, or that they're trying to trick everybody. And I think that brings up a lot of disease for people who want to feel like they're being authentic and speaking their truth as well. I really do apologise. My dog's got a cone on her head and she's hitting the door non-stop.
That's all right. That's all right. She's been to the vets.
Yes, she has. But the other way I was thinking about that is that if you are looking at the movie through the eyes of the imposter, there's a constant sense of being discovered, being rumbled, isn't there? You know, there's a threat, there's adrenaline and anxiety. When are they going to find out? And all of those emotions as well, because they drive our threat reflexes, they really limit our resourcefulness and our confidence in any given situation so that we don't show up as our best self. And then it kind of becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. And I think you're always nervous, aren't you, of being caught out as well? If you say something and people are like, oh, what does she know? Or, you know, what gives her the right to say that? I think we all feel so. Yeah, it's interesting. We've talked about what is imposter syndrome, but it'd be interesting to know who gets imposter syndrome.
Well, that's the other interesting thing about this as well. I think we all think that when we get to a certain level, we're not going to feel it anymore, because those people at that level couldn't possibly be feeling imposter syndrome. But actually, imposter syndrome never goes away. It never goes away entirely. It can be cyclical, so that you're not necessarily feeling it all the time. But imposter syndrome represents us getting to the edge of our growth zone. So, or at the edge of our comfort zone. I also call our comfort zone our confidence zone. So actually, I'm going to show you, I'm going to share something. It's the only slide I've got, I promise. So let's see how this goes. The screen sharing, let's see, hold on. Where are we? Oh, I'm just going to, if you can give me a minute, I'm going to get to put it in slide.
Oh, there we are. So let me add it to the.
There we go.
There we go.
So this is, I can't see you now, by the way, so let me know if anything comes up. But this is called the Four Stages of Competence model, and the imposter syndrome maps really well onto this. So the first stage of competence, and by competence, it's kind of to do with how well or how we perceive our knowledge or skill set around a certain subject or topic or area. So the first stage is unconscious incompetence, otherwise known as blissful ignorance. So this, if we liken this to, well, actually, let's liken it to being in a new role, in a job, actually. So before you even apply for the job, or when you very first apply and you maybe like think, oh, I'm winging it, great, I'm whatever, I don't really know what's involved. Somehow you get the job. So you're kind of,
I think,
you're not really that conscious about what you need in terms of skill sets when you go into that role. There's a lot of kind of optimism, hope, a lot of hope. And then you go into the role and you suddenly, in your first week, I think people, one of my friends has just started a really new senior position actually, and she said she's gone from a really senior position into another senior position and suddenly feels like an idiot, frankly. You know, like she doesn't know what she's doing at all. She's totally caught up in this. I thought I knew stuff, and actually I've come into this role, I'm starting again. This can also relate to when people are even approaching a job and they see the job spec, that they suddenly they think, oh my gosh, I haven't got what it takes, I'm incompetent. It's a very uneasy place to be. It's really uncomfortable, and it can create a lot of anxiety, this space as well. But as we learn more and we grow our confidence, we move into conscious competence. So this is that point at which you know what you're doing, but you have to really think about it. There's a lot of thought and effort and sometimes emotion that still goes in at this level. You are performing, but around this level, there can also be a lot of presenteeism at work. You very much relate your value to how productive you're being. And there's a real sense of needing to prove yourself still. The final stage is unconscious competence. And that's when you know, if you're further down the ladder at conscious incompetence, you look at the people who've been in the job for a long time, you look at the people that seem to have it all handled, and they just glide through because they've been doing it for years. They seem to have this level of unconscious competence. They're doing it on autopilot. It's no longer that this role is at the edge of their comfort zone. It's actually within it, and they're happy doing what they're doing. Okay. So as I mentioned, imposter syndrome sits around this middle band. So this is that. Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you notice when you say that makes sense? What's coming up for you?
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? I was just like thinking about me and my business. I was like, I think I'm like basically at the bottom too, but that's fine. And now I'm like, that's fine, and that's, you know, that's accepting. What I think is quite interesting is, what do you say then to people that you know, that you're going up a ladder, aren't you? Or you're growing. So what about people at the top of the unconscious competence? Do you think that's the point where people should be looking for a new role, or?
So this isn't necessarily about a new role. We're whole human beings. When I coach, although I'm coaching people around leadership, the truth is we don't really, when we live our life in silos, it can put kind of undue stress on us, and there feels like there's a disconnection, there's a lack of authenticity. And for me, one of the gifts of COVID and working from home is that people have been able to represent themselves as their whole self. We now giggle when people's toddlers come into the room, and especially frankly, if it, you know, do you remember that newsreader at the beginning of the I think he's a newsreader being interviewed on BBC News, and his toddler comes in the back of the room with some woman like skirting in on her hands and knees. It's all very humorous. So actually, it's when we become competent in one area, for some people it's not about taking on the next challenge at work. It might be, my work-life balance is out of kilter. That's actually the space that needs to become my new challenge. That's I've got too comfortable actually settling and compromising. And the conscious incompetence is going to be, how on earth, like, I know there's a problem, I know there's a challenge, how on earth do I do this? What do I put into place? So actually, you're right, this arrow is in place because in fact it infers that there's only one task at one time. But really, if you're multitasking and you've got lots of challenges and lots of things that are pushing you to the edge of your growth zone, there's loads of these ladders alongside each other. Obviously, and it can get really blurry as well. If you're in that imposter syndrome zone with lots of them at once, it can be a real hit to your confidence.
Probably too overwhelming.
Yeah. So actually I think that's another gift, is that if you start looking at this and thinking, wow, I am actually in this space in so many areas of my life, I'd really encourage you to think about being kind to yourself. There's that compassion piece again. It's not just about offering compassion to others, it's about having compassion with yourself. Which one of these spaces is most important for you to grow in right now? And ease off the gas on the others. Be kinder to yourself, and just recognize this is a growth process. We have the phrase growing pains, and this is growing pains.
I'm just thinking about, when you have a baby, it's the same. You like when you have a baby, before you have a baby, you're like unconscious incompetence, aren't you? When you're pregnant, you think, how hard can it be? Before you get pregnant. And then you have a baby and it's like suddenly like, oh my gosh, this is what am I doing? But actually, I think with children, because they change all the time, you're constantly going in that. I don't know if you ever get to that unconscious competence. I think you just keep going back.
I think if you ask my mum and dad, probably not.
Yeah.
I've got a teenager now, and there's just another layer of I realise I don't know how to parent a teenager. I don't know how to let go completely, to let him have his own space. So it's a different side of life, isn't it? And actually, there's something here. I've mentioned about this being your comfort zone, being equivalent really to your confidence zone. Actually, I might stop sharing now if that's right, because I can't see you.
Let me just remove that. There we go. Can you see me now?
I can't, but that's probably to do with my unconscious incompetence. Let's have a look. There we go. I've got you back.
Okay, cool.
So in terms of confidence, and you were saying something about feeling like you've got it and then thinking, oh my God, I don't know this. And it brought up the word trust for me. And what I find, I love looking at the roots of words, their meanings. And confidence comes from the Latin con, so with, fidere is trust. So with trust. And so self-confidence is with trust in yourself. Okay. And I think that's what I really see happen as well. When people's comfort zone, when you push your comfort zone out, when you do something outside your comfort zone, you grow your zone of confidence and self-trust. And when you trust yourself, I'm holding my hands like this because it's not linear. When you trust yourself in one area of your life, like when you do something amazing at work or amazing at home and you're like, I could conquer the world.
Yeah, I know, I do get that feeling. Even if it's something just really small, like you managed to blitz the house and then you feel amazing, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. And actually the reverse is true. And I think that's worth mentioning, particularly this year, because our comfort zone and our confidence zone, our zone of self-trust through COVID, for most of us, has shrunk. Because we haven't left the four walls of our house. We were shielding for 6 months, or not quite that long, but months of last year. And I was quite comfortable. I'm an introvert, so that suited me down to the ground. But we have shrunk our zone of confidence. Before lockdown, could you imagine walking into a shopping centre and feeling a bit nervous?
Yeah.
So the things that give us anxiety and nerves, things that used to be in the comfort zone, as the comfort zone shrunk, they're now outside it.
Okay,
and that
so
means
more things,
a lot of other things that used to feel like they were just outside your comfort zone, now they feel like they're miles outside your comfort zone. And the other thing, I know you've mentioned to me that the people who are involved, there's various audiences in this group, but one of the big audiences is people who have had a career break for extended family leave. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, Elizabeth, but I didn't have long off with my first baby, but even not having long off, it knocked my confidence. The second one, I had 2.5 years off till he went to nursery. Yeah. And my confidence, I had awareness because of my coaching background, but I wasn't living it. I wasn't breathing it. My confidence had really shrunk. And I couldn't imagine talking to people in a boardroom. I'd read through my CV of what I'd done years before and think, I feel like this is a completely different person.
Yeah.
I can't, this is so impressive. Who is this? Yeah. So that's the other thing about just give yourself permission. If anyone is beating themselves up for feeling not good enough, for having this voice of who are you to go for that job? Who are you to be doing this job? Everyone's going to discover you. You're rubbish, you're not good enough. We have a really big inner judgment thing go on as well about them not being good enough. Everyone does. You're not alone at all. Everybody has that.
Yeah, we've had Alima say she says she's really resonating with her, so thank you.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah. And actually that's why I really wanted to come and speak to your group, because I've been made redundant.
Yeah, I have.
And it hurt. Everyone says don't take it personally. It hurt because I'd really shown up for that company and given them everything over and above. And I somehow thought an exception would be made for me. But that, again, that kind of chips away, because I trusted that I would be okay. And when I wasn't, it really dented my self-trust and my self-love.
Yeah.
That's another great word, actually, Elizabeth. The root of the word believe is from Old English. Be meaning grow and leaf meaning love. Right. So when something hits your self-belief, it's hitting your self-love. That made me feel a bit emotional.
Yeah, it was me. Yeah, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. And ultimately, you know, how hard is life if we're going through it with our self-love and our self-trust being hit?
Yeah, it's hard.
It is. And so that imposter syndrome relates very much to the growth areas, but underpinning all of this is that self-love and self-trust piece.
We've had some questions coming in.
Great.
So we've had Halima in Facebook. She wants to know, I think this is a really good question. How do we work to the top of the ladder? How do we go from unconscious incompetent to is it unconscious competence? I got that right. Yeah. How do we move through that ladder quickly, or do we accept the pace we go? That's quite interesting.
Different people, different paces. So I would relate it to how I work with my clients. Some clients come in and they'll have like a 6-program session experience, and they don't necessarily get to their new job in 6 weeks. In fact, they rarely would. I'm not a career coach, by the way. It's that they come for something else and they end up in this space. So yeah, they don't necessarily come for they don't necessarily get to the new career piece in that time, but they are willing to be I love Brené Brown. I don't know if you know Brené Brown, but
I've heard of her. I think I need to.
Oh, she's fantastic. Go and have a look at her. One of the things she talks about us needing to have to show up in the world is vulnerable courage. It's
I like really that.
Big. Yeah. Like, imagine being courageous and embracing the vulnerability around us, around it. Like, when have you ever done something that needed courage that didn't make you vulnerable? So when I have clients, or if the lady who asked, if she is willing to like step into this with vulnerable courage and commitment to take action, you get to set your own pace. If someone else is coming to it and thinking, you know what, my comfort zone's really, my courage, comfort zone is really small right now, my confidence zone, and I'm really spread thin with my kids and various other things going on, I can't do that quickly. That's fine too. You can just take the baby steps to grow your confidence slowly. It's totally up to you as an individual. One of the things that's going to really assist you is if you give yourself permission to choose your pace with courage.
Okay.
And again, this is the thing of let go of judgment. If slow and steady is right for you, awesome. If quick is what you need, great, go for it. I had coaching last week, and I've adopted a new mantra because I've got quite a lot of things pulling me in different directions of my life.
Yeah.
And I've decided to approach my business growth, oversharing, but as a turtle. I'm using the metaphor of a turtle. So for me, I was thinking of the hare and the tortoise initially.
Yeah.
And the tortoise being, you know, slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
But then the idea of a turtle came. I'm speaking to the right crowd here, I think. You know, in Finding Nemo, that the turtles get in the Gulf Stream, and they just kind of like glide with the energy around them. They're not necessarily going slow. They're not necessarily going fast. I've seen turtles in the wild. They are slow movers. But when the environment lets them go with the flow and pick up pace, they do. But it's about just kind of like stepping into it with ease. And that's really powerful for me. That really works for me. It might be that other people need to think of themselves as some different kind of metaphor. But I would say check in with yourself. what is it you need to achieve? Who says that you need to achieve it by then, or that you need to achieve that? Is it a should? Is it a want to? Sometimes we have musts. Sometimes we've got a mortgage to pay, or a divorce to go through, or there are life circumstances that mean we sometimes have to make choices in reaction to that, to keep a roof over our heads, and sometimes we have more freedom about that choice. It's another great word. I'm just going to bombard you with words today, Elizabeth, which is responsibility. And this is the thing about take responsibility for your choices. And I don't want that word responsibility to be about burden. I want you to flip it and think of it in terms of your ability to respond. It's actually freedom and choice.
Okay. That's interesting.
Otherwise, you're kind of like in that victim space of I have to, I should. Take responsibility and make your own choices.
Yeah. We've had Nancy on LinkedIn as well. She said that she found the COVID lockdown, severely impacted her confidence, and she never realised how much she needed social interactions to help her understand her own abilities. She went through a really traumatic period of imposter syndrome, but with some coaching, she's finally getting through to the consciously competent stage.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, wow. That's good. Well done,
That's
Nancy.
Amazing. Yeah, and that's the other thing. It depends on the challenge, and it depends whether you're trying to get back to territory you were in before, or whether this is breaking new ground. That can have a huge impact on the pace of that change as well. Because, things like, I know I mentioned the shopping centre, or I've been to a pub.
It's funny, isn't it? Like the first time you go to a restaurant, before they reopened restaurants, like I remember chatting to my husband like April, and we were watching something on TV, and they were going to a restaurant. It's like, I'm worried I've forgotten what to do. I feel really alien, a waiter coming and giving an order, but
So you had that first step of the conscious incompetence, literally around what do I do who am I in a restaurant? What's it going to be like? Who am I going to do? You have that, and it has all those feelings of anxiety and threat, and it's actually triggering your fight, flight, freeze, flop, tend and befriend, appease reflexes, those ones. So you can feel it, can't you? The fight and flight building up of, do I not go? Do I not go? Do I just go and flop under my duvet? Yes, it's feeding all of those things, but because you're familiar with it, and this, I don't know if you found this as well, Elizabeth, but I found this going back into work after having my break. I thought it was going to be horrific. I went back in, and after a couple of days, I was like, oh, I've undersold myself here.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even be in this role. So then I basically redesigned the entire role.
Oh, did you?
Like a very understanding boss who let me redesign my role. So you'll find that you can sometimes almost leapfrog to the top step again.
Yeah, I think we do overthink things. So we've had another question from somebody on Facebook. So she worked at a senior level, delivered on KPIs and promoted into the role. However, she'd be challenged by her manager to be more extrovert. And as a natural introvert, this would then trigger imposter syndrome. So what advice would you give to her to stop letting that feeling take over?
That's difficult. It's a tricky situation because you're basically being pushed into something. I am all about being your authentic self. I really am. There's no happiness in pretending to be something you're not. It's exhausting pretending to be something you're not. And it's also exhausting living someone else's values or someone else's standards or shoulds. So I would say there's two pieces here. One is around her own personal development, to really connect to what's true for her and what I would call your inner leader. You're kind of that wise truth in you, and that you can love and nurture that. So there's different ways to do this. Through mindfulness is brilliant. It helps really quieten your brain. I'm a latecomer to mindfulness. I only started it about 2 years ago, but literally in the space of a couple of minutes, you can really, when you're mindful, or if you do body work, and by body work I mean you kind of like go, it's kind of you're noticing what's going on in your body rather than your mind. those mind monkeys, those saboteur voices, they go very quiet very quickly. So put yourself into a resourceful state and have confidence in who you are. And there are kind of, there's work you can do around that. I've got some in a handout actually. Okay. And it's the sort of thing people do with coaches too. Okay. And also there's an up managing piece here. So it's kind of a form of bullying, which isn't something that person necessarily recognizes as that. They could well be coming from a place of, this is what works for me, I believe in you, I want you further up that ladder, this is what you need to do. That's their truth, it isn't the truth.
And also, as someone that has been a manager, I have been told by managers above me to tell other people, and then you know, even things, so it depends who it's coming from as well, and it might be
I mean, there's different statistics for this, but actually there's a phenomenal number of introverts in the world. There really are. I used to think, I discovered this, for people who don't realize, introvert doesn't mean quiet and shy. Introvert means I get my energy by being on my own or having small group conversations.
Okay.
Extrovert means I get my energy by being in big groups and mingling. So for me, Zoom and lockdown's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, do you know how you said it? I've always thought of myself as quite an extrovert, but actually I'm more comfortable doing this than walking into a big room where you don't know anybody, and then you have to force those conversations, mingle. Yeah.
I think a lot of people have that initial thing when they're going over the threshold. It's kind of how, when you're there, are you thinking, you know, you can do your bit, and then it's like, oh, this is quite exhausting.
I just think you go in, you think, God, I don't know anybody, everyone's talking. And then you feel really awkward, don't you, like interrupting a group that's already talking.
So that can be an overlap between whether you're introvert or extrovert, and also that imposter thing of feeling like you're coming in, and it's that need to belong. Like, what if I get in here and I don't belong? What if I can't get into a conversation?
Yeah, then you just look silly at the edge.
yeah, exactly. But in terms of the up managing piece, something I have found really helpful is to have an honest conversation, not from a position of I'm less than. Let go of introvert being less than. It's not, it's different too. And I would say it would be, so I haven't answered this question before. Off the top of my head, what I'm thinking I would probably do is to say, what's important to you about me being an extrovert, because it doesn't come naturally to me. And then actually to potentially explain what introvert means, and actually it's very draining, and it will stop me giving my best in other areas. And that will be the impact on me. So and then see what they say, because they might be like, oh my gosh, I'd never thought of it like that. It's just about opening let go of any shame. Shame is a real limiter. So if you're feeling like, oh, I'm ashamed, I can't show up more like that, let go of it and come from a place of accepting and loving yourself, and knowing what you stand for, and knowing the value you offer, knowing how it is working. And potentially the other thing could be about talking about how introvert qualities are actually really supportive as a, you know, in balance with your manager's extrovert qualities.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I agree with you. Probably we need all sorts of different personalities, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Something like, so I've seen different statistics on this, but I used to think it was like 5% of the population were introverts, because so much of society is built up to us all needing to show up as extroverts. But actually, naturally, it's something more like a 40-60 split. And I'm having a lot of conversations with people like you, Elizabeth, who have just said, I used to think I was an extrovert, and actually now, with lockdown, I'm thinking maybe I'm more comfortable in my own skin in this space. So it is a fine line between, are you actually just shrinking your comfort zone, your courage zone, or is it how you really feel? And some people are in between. So I would say, don't let your comfort zone, your courage zone shrink, your confidence zone. So that's the other thing to check in with. Are there opportunities that you could show up in a more extrovert fashion that would grow your comfort zone and still be in alignment with what serves you?
Okay. We've had some, we had a recommendation on a book called The Introverted Leader by Deborah on LinkedIn. And then we have another question which relates actually to the question we had in our Facebook group. We had a question from Deborah in our Facebook group last night, and we've had a similar question now from a LinkedIn user as well. So I think you'll probably be able to answer them both. So the LinkedIn user has said, what advice would you give to employers around supporting people and getting them to understand imposter syndrome? And Deborah on Facebook, her question was, how do you support a colleague you feel has imposter syndrome?
Right. So, I'm going to add a tiny bit in advance. Well, actually, I'd like to, if people are still able to comment, are they sure it's imposter syndrome and not kind of low confidence in terms of coming back to the workplace after working from home or furlough?
If you could let us know.
So I'll talk to it being imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
There's also another thing that's very relevant to right now is that change is a really hard thing for a lot of human beings. Change that is thrust upon us is a really hard thing for most human beings.
We've all had it, haven't we? We've all had
that. Yeah. And actually, I watched your interview with Caro the other day. Was it yesterday? Yeah. And she was talking about the grief curve for, what was she talking about to do with?
I think it was redundancy.
Redundancy. I totally relate to that. Yeah. It's also, it's actually, that grief curve has been mapped by a man called John Fisher, and he calls it the process of transition. So it's also a change curve. So people coming back into the workplace are going through these different stages, which include despair, depression, and eventually you're coming out the other side. You're on a curve. So it's if you do feel like you're struggling with that, I'd really encourage you to look up John Fisher process of transition. I might have it on my LinkedIn page, but maybe not. I've been running a lot of workshops on that at the moment, and people are so relieved to know they're in process rather than permanently broken. So that aside, let's talk about that imposter syndrome piece. If you have some techniques to help people with imposter syndrome, what's very typical of women as well, is that we strive for perfectionism. Yeah. So I would say, again, Brené Brown does a lot of stuff on perfectionism for women, and that what does she say? We're expected to do it all, do it perfectly, and not let them see us sweat or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but there's this piece around perfectionism. So that's the first thing I would do, is encourage them to let go of perfect. And let's talk about because perfectionism also encourages presenteeism and measurement against productivity alone, and it leads to burnout. So that's that piece. Remember, that kind of third step is very much around that. So I would sit down with them and have a discussion around what is an acceptable level to get the job done rather than perfect. I think it's Sheryl Sandberg that says that, isn't it? Done is better than perfect.
A lot of I've heard it, done is better than perfect. People.
Yes. Yeah. So that's that kind of, what does 80% perfect look like? Let's let go of imposter. Mentoring is a really good idea, so they can have someone ahead of them on the curve that is helping them, on the steps rather, that is helping them to learn faster. So have a look at where the skills gap is, training courses, mentoring, that kind of thing. Obviously I'm going to say coaching, because coaching does a real bit around the self-awareness and moving into action piece. And action is really important in building confidence, because if you just talk about it, it's great, but you don't actually, it's only the action that expands your comfort zone and your confidence zone. And it provides, when you take action, it either provides learning to grow again, or it provides evidence of success. That's another missing piece of the puzzle for most women, and people who are suffering with imposter syndrome, is that they do the job. Especially if they're busy, you do the job, you're happy, you put everything into it, you're happy with how you did it, you do it, you're like, at last, done it, park it, gone. There's no celebration of it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's a
Gosh,
really
I feel like I'm getting so much from you. Yeah.
That's good.
I can relate
but
to
that is
that.
a really important part of it, actually, that when someone completes a job and they do it well, to spend that time reflecting.
Just savor the moment, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, Sven-Goran Eriksson, no, I don't mean him. Clive Woodward, when England won the World Cup rugby years ago, again, I remember hearing him talk about how they review matches, how like they're talking, how do you motivate the team, how do you get their mindset in the game, or something. And he was talking about when they do something badly, they look through it quickly. What are the learnings? What do we want to take forward? Drop it. When they do something well, they really analyze it. What are they going to replicate? What are you going to take forward for this? What do you want to, a great question in coaching is, what do you want to recognize yourself for in this? How have you grown through this process? What have you added to your skill set? Really celebrate and lock in that learning, because the imposter is in collaboration with our mind monkeys, and they don't want you to do that, because that encourages you to take more risk and grow faster. And they're quite happy you just staying in this whirlwind. But stop the merry-go-round, take some time out, maybe even take them out for a coffee or whatever. Take a special moment to lock in that success, because that is what will move them forward and have them realize that they're stepping onto, it's almost like the podium. You're stepping onto the conscious competence.
Yeah.
Step on that podium, enjoy it, and then you can go back and start again and recognize that you're capable of completing that process.
Good.
It's hard when you're self-employed, Liz.
Yeah,
we've had another. It's still worth taking that time.
Yeah, we've had another recommendation for a book called Quiet about introverts. So thank you
Susan
for that.
Cain, I think. Quiet.
Melanie on LinkedIn said she can really relate to all we're saying about entering a room and taking part in a conversation. She always feels that she doesn't have anything relevant to say and feels awkward. And I think, like me, I think you're listening to me, Melanie. She's an extrovert/introvert, and it is a constant battle.
So I mentioned that on that score, this is another great resource. Beyoncé. Like, who would imagine that Beyoncé would have these kind of thoughts?
Yeah.
And yet, she's got an album, This Is Sasha Fierce.
Yeah.
And it's because she has her alter ego, Sasha Fierce. So go and have a look at a YouTube video of her doing, she's done a few interviews on this. And again, this is another coaching tool where you kind of build a personality for yourself that is a quick access point. It's not that it isn't authentic. It's a version of you, and it's a quick access point to access a type of resourcefulness. So her Sasha Fierce is basically sexy, confident, showgirl. And I watched an interview with her with Oprah, and she's saying Beyoncé could not get in that tight suit. Sasha Fierce has to get in that tight suit. Beyoncé stands on the side of the stage with butterflies, and when she gets the high heels on, she hears the crowd, the music starts, and Sasha Fierce comes in. And when she walks out on that stage, that's who she is. And that can work really well. When I was being made redundant, I had to go through various interviews. You can get your Sasha Fierce on, or we talk about like your superhero pose. I'd recommend you do this out of sight of other people, because otherwise you look a bit of a weirdo.
Yeah.
But it is that, you've your screen's breaking up. Hopefully we're okay.
Yours broken up a bit. Hopefully it'll be all right. Yeah.
Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, yeah. You're frozen now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. You're frozen. I can see you. It's gone a bit blurry, but I can see you.
Okay, hopefully that will come back in any second. But yeah, you can choose. I was saying about the alter ego, wasn't I? You can choose. It's really just a resourcefulness. Yeah, your superhero pose. That's it. So you choose your superhero pose. It's actually quite hard to not feel more confident when you put your hands on your hips or one arm in the air, or your Sasha Fierce. Get your Sasha Fierce on, or your tango. Your Strictly Come Dancing performer. Get that on before you go into your interview, before you go into your room. Not because you're faking it, but because it's another way to quieten your mind monkeys and your imposter syndrome, and get back to your resourceful self.
Do you know what I think helps actually? Sometimes if I'm feeling nervous, I put on like a Beyoncé type song or something. Actually, that lifts me. I put it on really loud, and then you you take on that, don't you? You take on a bit of Sasha Fierce.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we've had Karishma has said one thing she's found is that demonstrating vulnerability and the human side as leaders of an organization often helps set up a culture where there is less pressure on those coming into new roles because they know it's okay not to know everything. So that's
absolutely
interesting.
That's a really core skill of contemporary leadership, is the ability to be vulnerable because of the space that you create for those who you're leading. Leading is not about you doing all the work. It's not about, in fact, we've moved away from, what do they call it? I'm trying to think what it's called. It's like the glory leader, the glory seeking leader. And it's much more moving into this space of, instead of power to the leader, no, what am I talking about? Power over. Instead of power over, it's about power to. And power to involves creating a space for people to show up in their full authenticity and power. Because if you had that space to work in, to be in, to live in, to show up as the whole of you, still be professional, but to show up as your true self and have those strengths recognized, those natural areas for growth supported, imagine how you would work in that space, as opposed to a space where you have to show up faking it every day.
Yeah. Lovely.
So it is a big part of the leadership conversation, and I'm really optimistic that
we've all had to be a bit more vulnerable, haven't we, with COVID? So hopefully those skills continue. Does anyone else have any more questions for Genna? It's been so useful.
I've loved it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. People are really saying there's no progress without authenticity. And you gave some really good advice and examples. People, they said it's been amazing. Really enjoyed it. Melanie says she's like a synchronized swimmer, all smiles and nose clip, but sculling like mad underneath the water.
So I'm like that, Melanie. Yeah, what would it be like to take the hat off, take the nose clip off, and just glide, or even just lay on your back for a while?
Yeah.
What would that be like?
So, where can people find you? Where can they connect with you, follow you?
So I know we're on Facebook too, but that's my kind of private account. So I connect with everyone through work and coaching on Instagram, and I'm most active on LinkedIn, to be honest.
So Genna Clark, isn't it, on LinkedIn?
Yeah. And I think I gave you a link to my link tree, if we're able to put that in the comments.
So I can add that in the comments.
Yeah, because I do have a guide to, I think there's 9 or 10 different habits that you can practice regularly. So some are daily, some are weekly, to move you through those stages of competence and quieten that imposter syndrome, so that you can move towards that grounded confidence where you're really in your truth. So, and if anyone wants to get in touch, feel free. It'd be great to hear from you.
Lovely. And do you offer coaching packages?
Yes. I have one-to-one coaching packages privately. I also coach for organizations, excuse me, and I run workshops for organizations. And actually so women's leadership space is almost a new iteration of my business this year, because I just decided I really wanted to step into supporting this feminine leadership. And my plan is towards the end of this year, or the fourth quarter, to start some group coaching programs at a lower price point, because when people come together, there's just such a synergy in their progress and what they learn. One-to-one coaching is outstanding, but there is a whole different value in doing something together as a group. So if you can just come pop along to the website, downloading your downloads, and then you'll hear about it when you go on my mailing list. You'll hear about it when it happens.
Thank you. And we had Andrea says, "What an amazing session! Thank you so much." And she's in Portugal, so yes, from Portugal. She said, "That's exciting." Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'll put all your links in the comments. So if people want to get in touch and find out more, they can. But thank you so much, Genna. That was so interesting. I've really, really enjoyed it. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Liz.
All right. See you soon. Thanks everyone for watching. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.